All right, here we are. Time again, May 3rd, 2024. Time for CommonSenseOhioShow.com. And, why do I say CommonSenseOhioShow.com? Because that's where you can go check out all the latest and greatest and all the oldest and, can't think of another word to work, but all the old episodes for Common Sense Ohio Show. You can also subscribe, get to your podcast subscription places right there at CommonSenseOhioShow.com. We are brought to you day in and day out by Harper Plus Accounting. Finished my first quarter. Got all my tax returns done with Glenn. Been a guest on the show. Any issues with your accounting, they got it. They got you covered. And now they've got this. Even, I think they focus a lot on entrepreneurs and business owners, small, large, medium, whatever. But they've also got a new division doing with your transactional stuff. So if you're thinking, well, I don't need an accountant, it's I don't need to pay all that for an accountant. They got you covered. It's like a step above the guys with the signs flipping them around on the side of the road, trying to entice you in.
That's got to be the best feeling to work with somebody like that.
Yeah.
Come on.
Like that's who you want working your taxes. But anyway, apparently it's Motorcycle Helmet Day because Norm has got his motorcycle helmet on.
National Wear a Helmet to Work Day.
Yeah. Well, did you ride your bike in?
No. It's supposed to rain today, so I didn't ride, but had my helmet on last night and for some test and tuning at Mid-Ohio. Anyway, it's wear your helmet to work, not wear your helmet while you're working. So I'll take this
take
off.
it off.
Okay,
Take your headphones off too,
Gotcha.
there, buddy.
But they actually have a day for wearing a helmet.
Yeah, is it a Hallmark Day? You buy a card for you helmet wearing SOBs.
There you go.
So, before we dive into all the weighty news topics, and there are plenty, we do a World War II fact of the day. And, the last couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks, I've gotten sort of heavy with it and found some stuff that I've linked up to current times. I'm just going to go trivia this week. On May 3rd, so there's a guy out there named Leonard Dawe, D-A-W-E. You ever heard of him?
No.
I hadn't either. But he worked for the he was a professor in England back in World War II, around about May 3rd-ish. Before that, he had become the setter for the Daily Telegraph. I had to look up what the hell a setter was. A setter is somebody who creates crossword puzzles.
Oh, really? I was going to say, I thought it was probably the type of the
typesetting or something. That's what I thought too. But no, it's a guy he was a guy who created crossword puzzles. Now, crossword puzzles apparently sort of emerged in the 1920s out of the United States, and it caught on like wildfire everywhere. The Daily Telegraph, even the subscriptions went up when they started offering crossword puzzles. And this guy, Leonard Dawe, was a setter. He created great crossword puzzles.
Cool.
But on this day, my sources sometimes give me differing days. So it might be May 2, it might be May 4, but roundabout now.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was going to talk about the end of World War II, but because that's going to happen, we'll do that next week. But
okay.
Yeah. Roundabout now, in 1944, emerged a series of crossword puzzles that the solutions were sword, Juno, mulberry. What was the other one? Omaha.
Oh boy.
All right. And, you would say
in May.
Before D-Day.
How is this guy getting these?
These were the answers to the crossword. So it's like there was a clue that led you to those words.
Oh, my God.
Reading it again, I didn't spend a whole lot of time.
The German high command should have been doing his crossword puzzle.
Right. So MI6 or whatever the the spy people got involved, and they grabbed the guy and they started interviewing him. They said, it's like this mystery still to this day.
Yeah. How did he get those
How did he get those things? He was eventually released and set back, and that was that. It is, and then in 19...
you're saying a crossword puzzle guy was arrested?
Yeah, well, a question.
Holy crap.
The guy who created it was like, well, how the hell do you know this? And what are you doing by disseminating this information? Is there some sort of Nazi spy intrigue going on?
Right.
It'd be a great movie.
It would be.
Put Tom Cruise at this guy or something. Do something.
Yeah.
But anyway, they investigated. About 40 years later, the 40-year anniversary of D-Day, somebody comes forward and says, well, I was this guy's student. And it turns out, this is what they think, how he would create crosswords by bringing his students in to say, give me some words. Like, here's the, give me some words that match this grid or whatever.
Okay.
And then he would go backfill with clues.
Okay.
And the student said, yeah, I gave him words. And, it turns out there was a military training camp right nearby the school, and the officers and the enlisted guys had less than tight-lips about the stuff, and he claims that he heard some of these words and gave those to the professor, who then backfilled clues in.
Wow.
Whether that's true or not, who knows? It's still a mystery. And trying to read like the British rags on this, they've got their little British quippy way to talk about it. But I never found that it was definitively established. But I think what people believe is that the students overheard soldiers talking about that and then backfilled it in.
Wow.
Or then he later backfilled it in with clues. So there you go. That was roundabout May 3rd, 1940. Or 1944.
Do you know what Juno even means? I don't even know what that word means.
It's a place in Alaska.
Well, spelled the same way?
No.
Okay.
Juno is how it's.
I don't know where it came from. Sword is obvious.
Which was one of the beaches.
Yeah. Juno, sword, Omaha.
It sounds like Greek mythology or something. I don't know what Juno. Well, anyway.
Yeah. No, you're right.
We've got this thing right in front of us.
I mean, it's just one of those irritating little factoids. I've never bothered
looking up.
And it is funny, Omaha Beach, right? So, like, there is no place in Nebraska that has a beach.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. That's true.
I don't know. Like, is Juno maybe like a Morse code? Like, when you say J, it's Juno. I don't
know.
Maybe a goddess, I think.
There you go.
Hera.
So it is like a mythological person.
Juno spacecraft.
All right, so here we go. Here we go. Hera, daughter of Cronus and Rhea, mother of Zeus, was associated with all aspects of life, all aspects of the life of women. The goddess of women, marriage, and childbirth. She was known by the Romans as Juno. Homer gave Hera the epithet ox-eyed because of her large, full eyes and described her as tall and striking.
And I'm guessing the Roman calendar picked up her name for the month of June.
Probably.
Yeah,
probably. All right. So
anyway.
We all know a lot of stuff collectively, but we didn't know that.
Well, I mean, that's fascinating, actually.
Fascinating as it is, we should probably bump on.
Absolutely. Well, start off with some gaffe stuff. So Biden, he made a statement in some kind of foreign policy speech a couple days ago, and he remarked that Japan and India have racist...
Xenophobic, he called them.
Xenophobic.
Because they're not letting immigrants in, flooding their borders like we are.
And so it's...
Well, hold on a second.
It's true about their immigration policy. Whether it's from xenophobia or not, I can't answer that. I don't know.
Well, who cares?
But Japan...
It's their country.
Yeah, Japan, I think... Now, this is a couple of years old, but Japan had only taken in, under refugee status, 4 people. 4.
Well, first of all, look how big Japan is.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have the vast geographical area that we have.
They and India are jammed with people.
Yeah, they got plenty of people already. Secondly, because they have plenty of people, as do we, right? So we don't need any more. At least not ones that are coming in illegally and not paying taxes and sucking off the government teat of benefits. Like we don't need any more of that.
No.
So we should have every right to refuse it. And there were some commentators saying, like, look at London, what's gone on with that city.
Oh, yeah.
And some cities in Germany, same thing. I mean,
the Netherlands.
The Netherlands. And, the Scandinavian countries are finally catching wise to this because they let this in. And, they're a very homogenistic culture.
Wasn't it the great-great-grandson of Vincent van Gogh that was murdered in the Netherlands because he drew a cartoon of Muhammad?
Mm-hmm.
And a radical... killed him, stabbed him to death in public.
So Biden with his nonsense, really what he's calling you folks, what he's calling us, what he's calling everybody, anybody who doesn't support open borders, illegal immigration.
Yeah.
I'm not saying immigration. I'm saying unlawful, illegal, wide open borders. Come in and do what you please, you criminals, you people, whatever you are, for whatever purpose. Then you're xenophobic. You're racist. If you don't. So it's the classic leftist trope.
Classic, like
agree with me or you're racist.
If you said all lives matter, including black lives,
you're
including
racist.
any
you're
other,
racist.
You're a racist.
Racist.
Right.
Yeah.
And poking at your allies.
That's the thing.
Poking at your. I mean.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just was like, is that the?
He's a moron of the highest order. And I will say it.
The Japanese emperor is probably going, what the fuck?
Well, Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, you know,
right.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
he's shaking his head. He's got to be shaking his head going, okay.
Like out of nowhere.
Right.
You're calling my culture or my country xenophobic.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
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 Like you could talk behind the
Stick
scenes.
it up your ass and break it off. That's what I'd be
Right.
saying.
Right. You know, like, could you take a few more refugees? You
So look, at the same time,
Wow.
we are like it. I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
yeah, it doesn't make sense.
The
Yeah.
policies are so absurd right now, or lack of policies are so absurd.
They're absurd.
And to say that other people are xenophobic for not adopting our ridiculousness is ridiculous.
Right. That's the point right there.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
He also gave a speech, I think yesterday. He finally decided to speak about the college campus unrest, where the police are finding about 50% of the people being arrested in general or being apprehended and then let loose, that about 50% of the people are not students on that campus.
They're
which is-
professional protesters.
Exactly.
Oh,
Agitators.
really? I hadn't heard
Yeah,
that.
about half. It's about half. And he said in his remarks something that I guess you could say this is aspirational, but it should not turn into legislation, which the House passed this
and
bill.
it's-
So Biden said, there's no room for hate speech. And as painful as it may be, yes, there is, Mr. President. Hate speech should be perfectly legal.
Man, doesn't it? It's like
I mean,
I hate that word. I hate that word.
I hate that
speech.
word, but
it
like-
makes me think of Orwell. So I remember reading 1984, and our kid. I don't think my sons had to read 1984, which is a telling problem with public education.
Oh, yeah, right.
But I had to read 1984, and there was all sorts of words like that: doublespeak and
Yeah.
Ministry of Truth, and
Right.
hate speech sounds like something very Orwellian, right out of 1984.
Totally. Because who decides what is hate?
That's right.
And there is nothing. So everybody knows I say, and I do mean, I love everybody, but that doesn't mean other people have to. So the people can hate me, and they can talk about how they hate me, and they can
What
give
is
a speech.
hate?
Exactly.
What is hate?
Right.
So
Yeah, well,
hate is
even if
morphed, but this is important.
Yeah.
So hate isn't just hate, isn't just name calling. It's morphed into you don't agree with me.
Exactly.
And think about how dangerous that is.
Right.
Because it's a hop, skip, and a jump from complete dismantling of the First Amendment. I mean, it
Right.
really is the gateway to getting rid of free speech. This is hate speech. So all speech is free, except some speech is freer than others. Back to Orwell,
Yeah.
right? So it's like
Yeah.
all animals are created equal, except some are more equal than others. And who is the arbiter of that? Biden? That guy can't even read a freaking teleprompter without saying the word pause.
Well, I mentioned the House, so it's not a law yet, but the House passed a bill on Wednesday.
I mean, I got to finish that. Like, this table is chock full of hate speech by their definitions.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Exactly.
And here's an example. So they adopted the Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. That's a worldwide organization, to educate and remember and to mark the fact that there was a Holocaust, because there is Holocaust denial, and they're contending against that as well they should. So they have an adoption within that. They have adopted within that organization a definition, and it's a long definition of what anti-Semitism is. And one of the aspects included in the definition of anti-Semitism is a position denying the Jewish people of a right to self-determination, a.k.a. having a state of Israel. Okay. Now, I think there should be. So here's Norm Murdoch's opinion. So let's dispense with this so that you don't think I'm an anti-Semite. The Jews, both religious and culturally, should have the right to a state. They should have a right to self-determination. So there you go. So that makes me a Zionist, I guess. So the House passed a law adopting for enforcement that definition of anti-Semitism. And it goes right to what Steve just said. Whether it's the president or the Congress, the idea that we're going to define what is acceptable speech.
To what end are we doing this?
I mean, this is is the slippery slope right here.
It doesn't make it any better.
Steve, it passed 320 to 91. Go ahead.
And it doesn't make it any better that it's defining anti-Semitism, because that happens to be speech that you want to support right now, or the speech you want to tamp down.
Right.
It doesn't make it any better. All the speech is free. All the speech is permitted. And the only remedy for it is more.
Yes.
More.
Right.
Right.
So I should be able to say any anti-Semitic trope I want to say.
That's right.
And I should be able to say it on this table, at this table, on this podcast. And I don't give a flying rat's behind what the definition of anti-Semitism is.
Right.
I should be able to say it. Am I going to? No, of course not. And I don't use. I try not to use offensive language to anybody. Epithets.
Yeah.
But I should be able to, right?
Absolutely.
Those are two different things. Now the question is, what are we undergirding all of this with? It should be some common sense of right and wrong, some common sense of morality in our society.
Right.
And we don't have it right now. And it doesn't mean that the government can backfill that with laws like this.
Yeah.
I find it stupid.
Yeah.
What is anti-Semitic? I don't know, and I don't care.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to go criticize. I'm not going to say offensive things to Jewish people, and I'm not going to say offensive things to Muslim people. I'm going to disagree with both at some time or another.
Sure.
And if you find that offensive, shove it up your ass.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Well said. And I think we touched on this in the previous show, and it never occurred to me that the House of Representatives would pass such a law. That just. So I don't know. Chuck Schumer said in the Senate he's not sure what he's going to do with this. But I could see the Senate passing it. I could see Biden signing it.
It's just political nonsense.
It's ridiculous.
Because if you're defining anti-Semitism, that means at some juncture, to what end you have to ask. At some juncture,
they'll make it illegal.
It'll make it illegal.
That's right.
Because why else would you need a definition
Why
for
else
this?
would you need a definition?
Correct.
Yeah, it's stupid.
Yeah.
It's political nonsense.
Yeah.
So,
well,
let's talk. I got to talk about this.
Go ahead.
It's bubble gum. Again, it's sort of bubble gum.
Yeah.
But it's underlined with some interesting stuff. Yeah. So the college campus debacles.
Yeah, while we're on that. Right. Yeah.
If you go check out GoFundMe, Phi Kappa Phi men defended their flag, throw them a rager, is this GoFundMe account. It is up to $516,672. So what happens is these guys, it was at, I think, the University of North Carolina. Am I right on that? Yeah. These fraternity guys.
Yeah.
So the protesters removed the United States flag from the public campus, took it down, put up the Palestine flag. The school finally got some courage, and went and pulled down the Palestine flag and put up the American flag. And as soon as they left, of course, the protesters went back to take it down. Well, this group of fraternity kids from Phi Kappa, whatever they are, came and protected the flag and prevented it from hitting the ground and did all this. Well, somebody saw this on TV because, of course, social media and it went viral.
Yeah, it didn't happen unless it's on video.
That's right.
That's our culture.
The GoFundMe, throw them a rager. So somebody, not even a brother or a member of this fraternity, decided somebody needs something. I mean, they deserve something. Let's throw them a rager. So now it's up to like $516,672.
Oh my God!
Wow.
That's how much the GoFundMe is. So anybody wants to check that out and go fund them. And they sang the Star Spangled Banner, etc. So this is an interesting. Underlying this is interesting. So why is it controversial to take down the United States flag? Or, fly the United States flag at a public-funded university.
Right. Crazy.
Where are we in this country where you can't even salute the flag?
Well, it's like that Texas boy that temporarily was, suspended in high school for wearing, all he did was he wore a T-shirt that had the American flag on it. And they said that's a hate speech.
Unbelievable. Well, there's a case called Tinker versus Des Moines Independent School District. I think back in the Vietnam era, they were wearing black armbands or something, and I think it was a black kid and he was punished for that. And the U.S. Supreme Court finally rules, and the quote was something along the lines of, "Kids do not check their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse door when they enter a public school,
especially in a garment." Yeah, I do love these frat boys. So it's like this will piss off all the Marines, but It's kind of like the frat boy version of Mount Suribachi.
Yeah, I mean, they had their moment.
Yeah.
They had their
right.
Yeah, they had their
because I
moment.
saw the picture and their flagpoles in the background, and they're all huddled around the base of it, and I'm thinking, my God, World War II, we had the Marines putting up the flag.
Well, there's some respect to be had to any country's flag. Them taking down the Palestine flag. Hopefully, they were respectful of it.
I'm sure they were not.
Probably not. I understand the moment.
Like in Colombia,
I understand.
When the cops took down the Palestinian flag, they put it on the ground.
Did they?
Yeah. And they raised the American flag. Yeah. And Mayor Adams.
And I get. I mean, I'm not.
Mayor Adams, who is turning into a Republican.
Yeah.
Said some really strong things. He said only 18%. This is from Mayor Adams' speech yesterday. Mayor of New York City. He is really on this flag thing. And as you know, he's an ex-transit policeman. He said only 18% of American youth think that this is a good country, which leaves 82% do not think it's a good country. And he says
it's insanity.
He said, so this is the Democrat
I hope
mayor
that
of New
number's
York.
wrong.
No,
I hope
right.
it's wrong. He said we've got to quit this kind of education. We've got to quit this mind screwing of our youth where they think this is a bad place.
Is Palestine better?
And he said
exactly.
Brett, he said it in context with these students putting up the Palestinian flag. He's like, what are they doing?
Right. Well, no, I agree. I don't agree with them putting the Palestine flag up at all. I don't agree with that. I think respectful.
But it's a middle finger to America.
It
That's
certainly
why.
is.
It was like when they put up the North Vietnamese flag or the Viet Cong flag during the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
It wasn't really that they're supporting the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese. It was more or less to say, hey, America, F you.
The common thread is these people hate America.
That's right.
And they live here. They are it's like our founders, your father, your grandfather, his grandfather, all the way going back, planted this huge oak tree, a seed that has now become this huge oak tree with all these limbs.
Yes.
And these limbs create a nice, comfortable place for us to sit. And these morons are taking out their saws and cutting off the limbs.
Right.
They don't understand what they're doing.
Right.
Because once it's gone, it's gone. There is no freer place on the planet than the United States of America, and there never will be again if we let this go.
Yeah.
And, when we're obviously coming up on the anniversary of the Kent State shootings, wearing the hat.
Very similar.
But it's that, to what, are you wanting another Kent State situation?
That's right.
Do you want another one? Do you want to live in infamy like that?
And it's
because and you're not necessarily pushing it to that degree, but it's that what do you want? Because the universities cannot divest of this money. They can't.
No, they can't.
They can't. It cannot happen. And I understand their point. I get that they
can, but they won't. So here's what's interesting about this is that I was born in May 5th, 1970. On that day, I think there were tanks on Lane Avenue, and Woody Hayes was out there trying to call off the protesters and do with all this stuff. But you have to ask how it got that far. And look, I think Florida, I don't know who it was or what school it was down in Florida said it best. It's like, we're not running a freaking daycare here.
Yeah.
Like, just because you're enrolled in our colleges doesn't mean you get to go run amok, take over our streets and take over our college buildings and impede the education of everybody else who's here trying to get an education. Mm-hmm. That's not what we signed up for. That's not what you signed up for. I don't give a flying rat's ass how much you paid me to be here. Right. You don't have that right. Columbia and these universities have permitted it to get to this spot where there is no choice except to send the cops in and do this. So if they had just shut it down ab initio right from the start, then it wouldn't have happened. It's sort of like they have created and you have to ask. This isn't rocket science, right? I'm no genius. No. So they did it on purpose. It's like on some level, these universities agree with these protesters and they let it go because they don't want to, or they're so scared of them that they don't want to be the ones that say blah, blah, blah.
Well, Steve, what district, was it in Portland or Seattle that had that district called Chaz?
Yeah, it was during the BLM riots.
Yeah.
And it went to hell like overnight.
And then they burned down or they occupied a
People's
police station.
Homes, they burned down.
They tried to burn down a federal courthouse.
Right. It's criminal.
Yeah.
You can't permit this stuff.
No.
So Brett, your point's good.
Yeah.
Now, so you have to ask, and Ben Shapiro over at the Daily Wire, I agree with him on a lot of stuff, and some stuff I don't. But he had an interesting take on this.
He's a smart guy.
He had a very interesting take on this. We are basically subsidizing our our universities, both public and private.
Oh, we are.
By guaranteed student loans.
Right.
So it's like we are subsidizing them
amongst a whole host of other things, grants,
irrespective of that.
Yeah,
we are subsidizing
Absolutely.
these schools.
Right.
And when you look at it that way, when you look at student loans as a subsidy,
that's right. And it is.
And it is. It's a very interesting angle that I hadn't considered. I hate student loans, and we're bitching about them, and they want to pay them all, and they want to forgive them all, but yet they're still lending.
Yeah,
like they're talking about the scourge of what it is, but the government's still backing student loans. Like colleges have created these complete nonsense programs and buildings and degrees,
right? Because
the government's paying for it.
You can major in Star Trek.
It's so stupid.
What?
It's so dumb.
You're majoring in
and
Captain
Can you
Kirk?
imagine? Can you imagine, like, if you're a lender, or even my own son. So if I had to pay for my son's education, he comes to me and says, "I'm going to go to Columbia, and it's going to cost $100,000 a year.
Yeah,
and I'm going to major in Star Trek or some sort of
basket weaving
art, like Marxist art in the 20th century or some other nonsense." I'd be like, "Yeah, no freaking way.
Yeah, I'm not funding
You pay for that. I'm not going to pay for that.
That's right.
You wouldn't pay for it because there's no return on the money.
Right.
No.
Yet the government is.
Right.
And it's interesting to your point of universities kind of silently backing this, but talk, I may be a day late and a dollar short on this, but we think the simple solution to this would be you expel the students that don't leave.
Yes.
Then all of a sudden they're trespassing.
Yes.
And they're done.
Right.
We're done.
You have committed burglary and trespassing.
You're done.
Yeah, bye-bye.
If you don't want to be here and you don't want the tuition money going to Israel, as you say, then leave.
Kindly get the F out.
Right.
Did you see where
you can solve the problem? I mean, again, if it goes that far.
Did you see where
my son came home in my house and took over my bedroom with his buddies, saying, "I want more. I want more gas money,
Steve.
and you have to buy me another car, and you have to do this, and I don't like where you're spending your money, Dad." It'd be like, "Yeah, no, you got 10 seconds,
right?"
And then I'm kicking ass, right? It's like, get out.
Turn the dog loose.
That's right.
And I do like that we allow universities to be the place to voice your opinion. I get it. But
that's what it should be.
But we're going too far with this.
Hold on. I heard some commentary on this too. Why do we think that?
Well, more tradition than anything else, probably.
That's right.
But when did the tradition start? Because
actually, back in the 1700s.
Well, not to voice your opinion.
Oh well, true. That's a good point. They were actually stating essays and theses.
You were supposed to go to university to learn.
Yeah.
Like, when did it become a place for kids to go scream whatever their whim is about whatever their whim?
It's evolved. You're right.
No. I'm not criticizing you for this because somebody made this point and my light bulb went on. I was like, that's interesting. So we think that students should go have these free speech rights and all this crap. It's like, who says so? Like, you paid to go to college. Mm-hmm. You didn't pay to go rampage on the streets and picket and protest.
Well, Steve,
it's bullshit.
We've kind of lost that opportunity to do it on the courthouse lawn because you've brought this up too, that you do the soapbox deal.
Yeah.
In the early
people
years
used to go
of
and just talk, and you still could.
Do you guys not find it rather hypocritical that all of a sudden the left is real worried about free speech rights on campus?
On campus, right?
After banning all the conservative voices and canceling events and
arresting kids,
allowing people to protest, whether it's Ann Coulter or Tucker Carlson or whoever, and then they're not allowed to speak. All of a sudden now the left, you got to let these Hamas people speak. This is the
problem when you have
they're picking which kinds of speech.
When your standard is relative, this is what happens.
That's right.
Well, and I'm glad
instead of absolute.
Yes.
And I'm glad you shed light on the professional protesters that are there.
Oh yeah,
that's enlightening. And I should have put two and two together before you even said that.
Well, it's
its own industry.
They take off their helmet or their hat. It's bald guys in
like
their
35
40s.
years old, and they show up. They show their arrest records all over the country.
Yeah. They're wearing pink leotards.
But it's the same thing that happened in the 60s.
Yeah.
This happened in Colombia in the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same crap.
And in fact, the USSR back then, the Soviet Union, was funding those campus unrests.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's come out now that they actually...
It was their plan.
...had Soviet cells in the United States that were printing up the banners and supplying the infrastructure.
If you create unrest, if you create chaos, if you create if you educate kids to the point where they think the United States is a bad place,
Right.
and you have no moral standards anywhere, then you can dismantle a country.
Well, and today
And that's what's happening.
we have these Confucian centers on campus that are funded by the Chinese government.
It sounds great.
It's the same thing as the
he was
Soviets
a great thinker,
were doing.
Norm.
Right.
Yeah, except it's a Marxist communist educational plot.
Yeah.
And now they're calling for campuses to oust the Hillel affiliated offices that are on a lot of campuses, which is for Jewish students, or people who want to learn about Judaism. It's an office, a building, a club, or whatever for them, and they want those kicked off campus.
Well, that's because my daughter got to take advantage of that. We're not Jewish, but
Right.
to go to Israel over a winter break through Hillel.
Exactly.
When she went to Kent
Interesting.
State.
It's
And,
educational.
yeah, for sure. It was very educational. Now that she can see, looking back, going, "Oh my God, I was there. I was," those sorts of things.
It's not just stories in a Bible anymore.
Exactly.
It's actually stuff that you can see and feel, and
or
it's
how
still there.
How they interacted with each other. It's that no, we couldn't go there because those two hate each other. I mean, that literally happened.
So we've kicked out military recruitments off campus, right? Recruiters, now they want to get rid of Hillel. You can't have any kind of Christian anything. You can't have any conservative anything. But Hamas, they want free speech rights for them.
Yes.
I mean,
Exactly. And now we're creating laws so they can't have free speach rights. It's like this is so insane.
great.
Yeah. All you have to do.
Did you see Iran is offering scholarships for anybody who lost their who got expelled? You can go to Iran. I want to see
I'm sure
the
they're going to be flooding.
LGBTQ people.
I'm sure they're going to be all the gay people are going to be flooding into Iran
and flying off the top of buildings.
Yes, wearing their rainbow capes.
That's
right. You
that's
go wear that crap over there and see what happens. Now, I can't speak from any authority because I haven't been there, but I've got a hunch.
Well, it's
right.
It's a theocracy state. I mean,
you don't agree, then you got a right. So look,
I mean, at least Israel, right, is a secular state in terms of, like, they have Palestinians in their armed forces. That Israel, being mainly Jewish, okay, it's not a religious state.
Right.
It is a secular state. Iran is a theocracy.
Yeah. They have Palestinians in their army?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you know
Do they really?
Do you know our friend that runs the Nazareth Deli here in Columbus? He's an Israeli citizen. He's Palestinian.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And there's lots of them.
Well, that's great.
And he loves Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mentioned earlier too, if you really do want a good snapshot of what happened on May 4th in 70 at Kent State, first go visit it.
Yeah.
You can visit the memorial because it gives you a history of the day before, the day of, and protests and shootings that happened at other campuses weeks after too. So it's enlightening. But it also, and I this is the conspiracy theorist person, and I'm not a conspiracy person at all necessarily, but you kind of sit there and you kind of go, there were a lot of film cameras that day going on.
Yeah,
because they captured a lot of stuff, and I know once you put the pieces together, the day before the kids just beat the hell out of Kent. They burned some stuff down,
and they did occupy buildings.
They knew something was going on, and there were a lot of. And we're talking at that time. Remember, 1970. It's film cameras, not cell phones. Right. There were a lot of cameras going on at that point in time, or film cameras going on, capturing a lot of stuff.
Professional agitators.
There was something going on.
And that was going on.
But I'm glad, though, looking back, it's good it was captured.
It's good.
It really, thank God it was.
History's not telling the tale exactly. It's sort of like this. Like, where are you going to start your tale of history? When the police are going into the Columbia buildings, or when the university permitted it to go on for a month?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where there were tent encampments and people taking over and impeding kids from going to their classes. It's like it should have stopped immediately. And then this wouldn't have happened. And these kids have the gall to say they need humanitarian aid after they've taken over a building. Did you see this?
Yeah. Like Northwestern totally caved in.
It's like these kids are saying we need humanitarian aid, like hot food.
Oh my God.
Right, it's like if anybody who caves to this nonsense, you get what you deserve.
Yeah, so Northwestern took the opposite, near Chicago, took the opposite tact that the University of North Carolina, UCLA, and lately Columbia, they dispersed they gave the Hamas protesters everything they wanted. So anybody arrested, anybody suspended, expelled, whatever, they're reversing all of that. And they agreed to a bunch of new programs, and it basically caved in.
Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, so
here we go.
It works.
It'd be interesting to see where the parents' role is in
Violence
this.
works.
In regards to holding parents accountable for any damage, anything going on, because you know those kids aren't necessarily paying for their own education. It's mom and dad.
Yeah.
Well, my child would never do that.
Yeah.
Well,
You know?
and it's
Wow.
to cede the field to any of these demands, which are absurd on their face.
Right.
Right. They're absurd.
Right.
It just reflects what the university's motives are, because there's no you wouldn't say yes to this unless you agreed with the protesters. Like,
right.
You agreed with the
certainly
students.
looks that way, doesn't it? It comes off that way.
Yeah.
It does.
It's like you wouldn't.
And the faculty formed perimeter lines at several of these protests where the faculty locked arms to try to keep the police from going in.
Right.
So the faculty's on board.
Fire them all.
Yeah.
If I'm in charge, you're all fired. Like
Yeah.
imagine if this were your business and your employees are out there helping to impede your ability to do business. And not only that, like to impede your ability to serve customers who have paid you for your service.
Yeah.
So if I had employees upstairs in my law firm and they decided that they're going to barricade the front of my building because they don't agree with some policy or practice I have, say with COVID, and I've got clients coming and going that I can't help because of it, you're all effing fired.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Right.
You're fired. There's no severance. There's no nothing.
Yeah.
You're a traitor. Bye-bye. You're
Yeah.
fired.
Yeah, in those contracts that the university has with
The AAUP.
I can't imagine anything's covered in this in regards to legal ways of firing people.
Yeah, I don't.
Of teachers,
So
of professors.
a tenured
I don't know.
professor?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't know.
That should
how
be a
they-
violation.
I would
of
think if
their
a tenured
contract.
professor
Think?
is in conspiracy
I don't know.
to commit burglary, trespass, and other crimes that are impeding the university's business, then you should be fired.
It goes beyond
shame
first.
on the-
It goes beyond first, because I'm looking at that First Amendment piece. It's like, but it goes beyond that because you're impeding business, basically.
Yeah, this is crime.
Yeah.
You're committing crimes.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
It's a crime to take over a building and not prevent others to come. It's a crime.
That's right.
It's called burglary or trespass, depending on how you want to define it.
Right.
But it's a crime.
Yep.
And if you're a
It
professor,
would be so interesting if the Curtin students would sue the other students.
well, you'd sue the university and the other students. Yes, you absolutely. I would.
Because I paid to be here to take a test. Yes, I may agree with what you guys are saying on the lawn, but
I'm not getting what I paid
but,
for.
but that's not what I'm here.
To
I'm
breach a
going to
contract.
protest in another
Right.
way, but you're impeding my way to take my finals, to get the hell out of here and graduate to my job.
Yeah.
I'm suing you.
I'm suing. If I am a
That
kid,
would be so
if my
interesting.
son up at Bowling Green
Yes.
was unable to walk for graduation or unable to get to his finals or his education were impeded, I would seriously consider suing
That
Bowling
would be
Green.
such an interesting case.
Yeah.
The campus staff, there were, I think, 3 janitors that were effectively kidnapped at Columbia.
All right. So now you have.
They were entrapped. They were not allowed to leave the floor.
It's not
That's
effectively
kidnapping.
kidnapping. That is kidnapping.
That's kidnapping.
Exactly. So, is Biden going to send the FBI? Of
course not.
Come on, guys.
Of course not. Of course not.
But parents that go to a school board meeting and rant a little bit, they're domestic terrorists.
Yeah, they're domestic terrorists. These
Right.
people taking over our public building and impeding public business.
That's terrorism.
and let
That's-
alone the private universities.
Yeah, the
where this crap's
janitors
going on.
came out and said, yes, they were holding us. We were not permitted to leave.
Yeah, and so just to put in perspective in Ohio what kidnapping is, that's kidnapping.
Yes.
And it's a felony of the first degree, carries with it a maximum possible punishment of 11 years in prison.
How did they stop them from leaving then? Did
Well,
they-
physically would not
Just-
threat of violence.
Yeah, force or threat of force.
wow.
And eventually they relented, but for several hours they were not allowed to leave.
Yeah. And we've had this going on right here in Columbus. So the Ohio State protesters, I mean, a lot of those guys were arrested, or those protesters were arrested.
Yeah.
And then I went to court on Monday, I think, is when they were all coming through.
They wanted to arrest. Saw a
Of
couple
course
of
they did,
video.
yeah.
They were taunting him on video. It's
Yeah.
like, they're going to get arrested today. Did we do enough?
Yeah.
You're messing with the superintendent of Annapolis. I don't think he's going to tolerate
He's not
that.
going to tolerate, and he
Yeah,
shouldn't, and
no.
he shouldn't,
Yeah.
because look. I got my own theories on public universities. I mean, there's some pros and cons there,
Yeah.
but you've got kids who have paid to get an education, and these people are preventing the kids
Right.
from getting an education.
Yeah.
A small minority of them are preventing the majority from getting.
Because most of the kids, like I talked to my son, he's like, "Look, we don't care about any of this crap. We just want to." They just want to, have their fun and get their education and get out of there.
Getting back to Ben Shapiro's comment that you brought up, the other pernicious aspect of these federal backing of student loans is it has facilitated the hyperinflationary increases in tuition.
Oh yeah.
Because all it is a promissory note, and Uncle Joe is saying he's going to make that go away.
Right.
So I don't care what you charge me for this service.
I'll pay it. Yeah, because
I'll pay. It could be $1 million a year because Joe is going to wipe the slate clean.
This is the government always does this. They create a bad policy. It results in bad outcomes.
That's right.
And then they blame everyone else.
That's right.
For the outcome, not them.
Nobel.
It's the university's fault for overcharging for education, even though we were subsidizing it and letting them do it. So
that's right. Nobel laureate Milton Friedman and
yes.
Thomas Sowell, these guys, they always say you get more of what you subsidize. You always get more of what you pay for. So if you're going to subsidize student loans, people who otherwise maybe shouldn't go to college because they really don't want a degree, they want the lifestyle.
Right.
They just
it's free.
It's a 4-year vacation. Free. You get out of high school, you don't really have to get a job then. You can go to college and kind of float around, have fun, do kegers,
and then come out and bitch about $200,000 worth of debt for like a history degree that you can't get a job.
While your blue collar classmate is busting his ass at a dealership doing diesel work or whatever or putting roofs on houses or whatever the hell he's doing.
Yep.
They're in the real world. Some of these college kids are just deferring their adulthood.
And one of my favorite
years.
Thomas Sowell quotes is these bad policies are never judged on their outcome.
No.
Only their intent.
Only their intent.
And by the time the outcome has manifested, the people who push the policies are long gone.
That's right.
It's like,
well, that's how we got the subprime crisis on housing.
Right. It's like
everybody deserves a house.
Right. So
if you can
racist banks not lending to people, and
if you can fog a mirror, we'll give you a mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then what were you expecting? Right. They can't pay the loan back.
Yeah, Thomas Sowell wrote a great book on that, The Housing Boom and Bust. It is one of the most insightful, thin little read. It's only you can be done in a couple hours.
Yeah.
And I buzzed through it as fast as I could. It was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And all fact, all of it, based on facts and studies.
So talk a little bit, if we can, about this Title IX redefinition of protected people. It used to be based on the two sexes, male, female. So Biden's administration, we talked about this last week, has decided to define those who think that they're the other gender, whether they've physically converted or not. If a male identifies and thinks he's a female or purports he's a female, he's now protected under Title IX. And Yost and 25 other states, Dave Yost, our AG, there's 26 states now that have formed a coalition to sue the administration over that rule change.
Well, this warrants a little bit of discussion.
That's more than half of the states.
Title IX, Title VII, I mean, these civil rights type legislative acts, you have to sort of put this in perspective. If the government is telling me that I, in my personal business, am not allowed to discriminate, you are impeding my freedom, right? And I'm not saying I disagree with the fact that I shouldn't discriminate, but it's sort of like the free speech. You're impeding my freedom. It's almost patently unconstitutional.
Yeah.
I've always struggled with this since I learned about this in law school. I took an employment Title VII type class. In your third year, you take these electives.
Right.
And it always bugs me because, after you take constitutional law, you realize all these freedoms that we have. And then you see this Title VII and Title IX telling us what we can and can't do in our personal lives. And if not, you can be prosecuted, you can be sued, you can be not prosecuted, but sued. And it is a violation of my freedom to choose who I hire at my workplace.
Right.
And
and fire too.
And fire. So, and I have to justify firing somebody of a certain race or skin color because I'd be worried about getting sued. So it's like on its face, it sounds good.
Yeah.
But it's troubling. It's a little troubling, you know. do I want to have a female worker? Do I want to have a male worker? Do I want to have a black worker, a white worker, whatever it is? It's like on the face of it, we should be able to choose that. And then how would you prevent discrimination? Well, the market will do that, because if I am stupid enough to say I'm not going to hire any women, and I'm not going to hire any black people, and I'm not going to hire any Asians, and I'm not going to hire any Jews, well, then somebody else will. Right?
That's right.
Well, you look at the auto dealership.
And you'll get called out on it.
Yeah. You look at the auto dealerships. They finally realized that women like to buy cars from women.
Mm-hmm. And guess what? There they are.
There they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I like buying cars from women, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I just do, because I'd rather deal with women buying a car.
Well, the CEO
I never
of
thought
General
about it, but it's
Motors.
interesting.
I just see the difference in it. I don't know why. Just that's my preference. But it's that it allowed itself to happen, but we didn't have any dictatorship of you must have 3 females on the floor.
Yeah.
The market fixed it.
The market fixed it. Now,
Well, the head of General Motors for like the last 10 years has been a female. Yeah. The CEO.
and I hope she's good at the job. It sounds like
exactly.
she is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So back to where we started here then. So you have these titles, and then so think about this. Biden, now, not Congress,
Right.
not the Senate, not the House.
They didn't modify Title IX. He did.
They didn't change anything. Biden said, I'm going to redefine through executive administrative action what this means. Think about that. So what you did yesterday was not against the law. What you did today is against the law.
Right.
This is what I have been harping on for the last 5 years. The administrative state is a dictatorship in the making.
So he came down on the side of Leah Thomas.
Yeah.
The guy who still has his package,
Yep.
that's swimming against, or did until he graduated, but was swimming.
Sure.
He now wants to be in the Olympics and compete internationally.
Oh, I'm
as
sure.
a female.
Why not go get a medal?
It's unreal.
Right. It's nonsense.
What if LeBron just rolls out of bed this morning and says, I'm a chick, I'm going to go into the WNBA?
I want to play on the Indiana Pacers.
Yeah.
I want to play up against Caitlin.
I mean, he could just.
Exactly.
Right.
It would be 400 to nothing. I mean, just drop the ball
Right.
in. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
But more troubling for me is the executive authority to modify rules this way
Yes.
and get away with it and
Willy-nilly.
basically create criminals overnight. It's been happening in the Second Amendment arena and the ATF.
Well, let's go to that. That's actually on my list.
Okay,
And
great.
Steve, I'm glad. Can you address that? The head of the ATF said, in theory, selling one gun privately could classify you as a dealer.
Yeah,
You have got to be.
There's an
cracking.
interpretation of the regulatory scheme that wants to redefine who's a dealer and who's not. So I don't want to go into the nuance. We did a munitions podcast on this at one point, but it has to do with you're selling guns for profit. Maybe oversimplify it that way. Well, that's almost everybody. and why does it matter? First of
Right.
all,
Yeah.
because if you're
Right.
selling a gun for profit, I sell you my gun, Norman, say it's now worth $200 more than I paid for it.
Right.
Well, I'm selling it to you for profit. Like I wouldn't sell it to you for less.
Well, if you have a Rembrandt and you got it from your dad,
Does that make
and
me
you
a
sell
dealer?
it to me for $500,000,
Now, does that make me a dealer?
Yeah.
And why do I care if I'm a dealer? Because if I'm a dealer, now I got to go I got to go do my forms. I got to get an
the
FFL,
FFL.
and I've got to get an official transfer.
Federal-
and I've got a
federal
firearms
firearms license.
I have to go through an FFL, a licensed federal agent, to make the transfer of the gun, who's then going to take down all sorts of information that they're going to promise never to use.
And
So-
they have the right to do surprise
right.
raids.
So if you have an FFL if you have an FFL, you sort of agree to open your doors to inspection
On demand.
of your books. But more important, it prevents private sales of firearms. So,
Yeah.
and you would ask why we care about private sales of firearms. Well, they're going to say because of crime. And I'm going to say, well, look, no criminal is going to follow these rules anyway.
Right.
Right.
So that,
Exactly.
forget about that. It's not going to prevent any crime. They're not even going to know about this rule because they're not going to care.
That's
You're
right.
doing it because you want to create a registration list for guns, and it's just another regulatory scheme to ban guns. And it's there's this idea of incrementalism, and it works both sides. If you have to take away somebody's rights incrementally. It's like the frog in the pot. You have to turn up the water slowly.
Right.
And because it happens almost imperceptibly at that point.
That's
you
right.
get to the point where you're like, wait a minute, what's happened?
Just one more little change.
It's like the end. Back to Animal Farm. It's like the end of Animal Farm when they all of a sudden look a little bit like the humans. It just happened.
So connect the dots in regards to how I'm not disbelieving you, but how Connect those dots of where it could go. Because we say that a lot, and I totally agree. But some people don't have the imagination to go there. You know what I mean?
Basically,
if you can.
So Grandpa kicks off, and he's got, he dies, and he leaves a Luger to his nephew, right? A war trophy that he picked up off the battlefield. Now the young man has a Luger. He doesn't want it, and he goes to a gun show, right?
And sells it.
And legally sells it to another Ohioan. Right?
At the gun show, not a dealer, but just another person.
Because he doesn't.
Or he just knows you because you collect, and he sells it to you.
And he sells it to me or however, or the next door neighbor.
He's now a criminal.
He's now a criminal under this interpretation.
Right. So he would now be required to go through an FFL. And, where does that go? Well, it gives the government more intrusion into our personal lives. And it goes nowhere if you accept the premise that the government can never be corrupt and take advantage of things or has a different agenda to do things like ban firearms. Because once they ban firearms, they have to know where they are. And in order to know where they are, they got to get them all on paper somewhere and track down names and addresses. And then you have to wonder, all right, so if Buford Pusser knocks on my door and says, I need you're registered for a gun, and I say, no, I don't have that anymore. Well, our paperwork doesn't show that you ever sold it. We'd like to come in and start looking around for it.
Yeah.
And, there's these people that would say, I've heard, and this is on the right, people on the right say this, the Law and Order folks. Well, I'd let them in to go search whatever they wanted.
I've got nothing to hide.
I got nothing to hide.
So the dumbest
you
response.
don't understand.
Yeah.
What if they're corrupt?
That's right.
What if they're corrupt? And if you think that doesn't happen, come follow me for about 6 months.
Right.
You dropped a little baggie of white stuff.
Yeah. We got the.
Whoa, what's that, mister?
Well, we know of cases where no crime was ever charged, but they have taken evidence out of somebody's house, like cash, like $30,000
all the time,
and it's in a baggie down at the sheriff's, holding storage room.
I have a client whose phone is in the storage department right now. It's like I can't get it out.
Yeah,
and they think they're entitled. Look, anytime the government seizes cash or guns, it's like get out of their cold dead hands. Are you getting that back?
Right.
Okay. No, I think it's a good example. I think playing this out is perfect.
Yeah.
To allow people to kind of think about, I can go there.
So you have to think, and it's not that I've had to think about that too. It's a good question because it's the same question that our founders answered when they said we're going to have something called the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah.
Like, why did they care whether the government had a warrant to come into your house? Like, if you wanted to create a society that was completely crime-free, you would just disband the Constitution and put the jackboots on the ground and take control, except that itself is corrupt and that itself is criminal. Right? You have to create a check on the governmental action because government is made up of humans, and humans, we all know, at least we all believe at this table, are imperfect. Though created in the image of God, we are vested with original sin and imperfection, and we all want to do better, but we all succumb to it sooner or later. And just because you work for the government, you don't get cloaked with some sort of immunity from that.
Yeah, and human beings often have axes to grind,
or we just have a bad day.
You just have You have a bad day.
Seriously, it can be as simple as that.
Say local Sheriff Bob doesn't like you because you married his cousin, and his cousin, it's like whatever. You don't think that person's going to happen. You don't think that person's got an axe to grind?
Does. Oh my God,
yes. You bet.
Let me roll out this. So this is a great little fact scenario. So last fall, the Elyria, Ohio Police Department responded to a young lady's call. She had broken up with her boyfriend that she was cohabitating with. His house, he was renting the apartment, if you will, the residence, and she had turned in her key to the landlord and said, "Okay, I'm moved out." And then she remembered, I have some meds at the house. I'd like to go get them. Well, she went back to the house, knocked on the door. The boyfriend said, "Get the hell out of here. I don't want anything to do. You're not allowed to come in here anymore. It's my residence. You moved out. You left. You turned in the key." So she calls the police. 5 Elyria policemen showed up, and they told her, "Listen, we don't have any reason to kick this guy's door down, but you can." So the police coached her to kick the door in. They kicked the door in. The police then got in a stack, like Now these are inexperienced, like
Clearly, they didn't know what the hell they were
they
doing.
didn't know what the. So they got into this. They got into this SWAT stack, like so they get into a line, and one of them goes right up. So the boyfriend's like up at the top of the landing, at the top of the stairs in his underwear, like where the bedroom is, and he goes, "What the hell are you doing in here?" And the police go in after the girlfriend, so she goes and gets the drugs or her medications, and one of the policemen charges right up the steps behind her to accost this guy at the top of the landing. And the guy at the top of the landing doesn't know, he's like,
They didn't know what the hell they're there for, right? Yeah. No.
What? You kick the door in? Like, there's no warrant, no Fourth Amendment, nothing.
Right. This is why. This is a manifestation of what we're talking about.
So they charged him with so they found some things, right?
Of course, right.
Oh my God.
And because he tussled, so one officer almost fell out a window. And this guy grabbed the officer and pulled him back in. Actually saved the officer, but they called that an assault on the police. He should have just let the guy. But at any rate, they charged this guy, and his attorney, who's a former state trooper and a police officer himself, said this is the most outrageous thing he's ever seen.
It is horrible.
He tried to get the body cam video. They said, well, because we dropped the charges, we erased all the body cam video.
Oh, my goodness.
So they dismissed all the charges.
I don't know if that's a crime, but that's public record. You can't do that. I'm sure there's protocol that they can't do it. So look, this is
is that
perfect,
unreal or what?
Brett, this story couldn't have come any better timing on the heels of your question, because this is what happens. You would say, how does it manifest itself that you give the government permission to do certain things? They drive an effing truck through it. So it is not true that this. Look, I don't know for sure whether this girl still had property rights to enter. But just because she did, you don't get to slam in the door and allow the police to come in.
It would be interesting to know if the girl knew one of the Elyria police, that axe to grind.
Funny you should bring that up. I had a case at a college. I'm not going to mention which one, but it was a college. It was a private university here in Ohio. And my client was accused of, I can't remember what he was accused of. Oh, assaulting a girl, right? It might have even been like a misdemeanor type sex offense. And we got our investigator involved and we looked into it, and it was total BS. And it was right in the advent of social media. Facebook, MySpace was still around. I don't know if Twitter or whatever, but it was in the middle of social media. And we start flipping somebody, my law clerk at the time, younger kid, turned out to be a good lawyer. He works for the state now in the medical board. He found social media accounts of the officer or of the girl. And there's the girl and the officer in about a half a dozen pictures with his arm around her. They're at a college party. They're sort of hanging out together. And he'd gotten a little too friendly with the girl, and he was the complaining witness who filed the complaint against my client. Of course, the case got dismissed, but it shows you, it's Norm's point and your point. These are humans. I'm not saying he's a bad man. I'm saying he's human, and he is subject to the same flaws that the rest of us are, the same temptations. I just heard a sermon on the temptations of Christ, right? And they're like, if you take those metaphorically, it's like we all have these things. And the one who was able to resist, of course, was Christ. But we can't always. We all succumb to temptations.
May I prescribe a movie for you?
Sure.
If you haven't seen it, have you seen The Last Temptation of Christ?
By
Martin Scorsese.
Yes.
Terribly misinterpreted movie.
Of course.
But it is a what-if movie. Like, what if Jesus had said, you know what?
I'm really hungry.
I don't want to be crucified.
Right.
I'm going to decline this from the Father, and I'm gonna go have a family, have kids, enjoy the comforts of, if you will, middle class life back then, whatever. And but people were so offended because here's Jesus having sex, having a wife, having a family, and they're like, no, don't you get it? That was the temptation of the devil, and the movie is revealing to you where
that goes, right?
It can go,
but then at the end, you see him on the cross, like he did not succumb to that temptation. But it shows you really what a huge sacrifice when you think of, how his mind must have been troubled.
Well, and think, the temptations always come when we're at our weakest.
Yes.
even
so he's
Christ,
out in the desert,
in
no
the desert,
water,
no water,
food.
starved.
Right.
And
the serpent is saying, "Hey, dude,
come on,
you
can do it.
Yeah,
yeah.
Come
we can do
on.
it together. We can do it together.
Don't
Right.
you dare do it.
So
go ahead.
But it's
Yeah.
I don't know how we got on that temptation things, but it's like
because he was man and God.
Yeah, but what led us to that in this discussion? I can't remember. But anyway, it's
well, we're all tempted with those.
those
moments.
So if you think that the police officers are not going to succumb to temptation to like their compass is somehow always true north,
right?
You're wrong.
Right.
You're just effing wrong. And anybody who was out supporting the BLM riots was saying just that, right? We can't have these horrible police officers. Yet now, they're okay somehow when cops are knocking on doors to go in and take your guns. Yeah. It's like it's the same. It's like free speech. It has to apply uniformly.
I should point out, by the way, just to go back for a second, the ACLU did come out against that House bill.
Good.
Yeah.
Finally.
So it's nice.
Now, if they were going in there to find guns or to find the ACLU would have taken a different viewpoint.
Sure,
they've become content based.
So a little fun story.
Yeah.
Even though
ended up.
This doesn't quite fit in, but hey. So Cedar Point has debuted a new ride called Top Thrill 2. It's the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the world. It launches. So you launch at 74 miles an hour. It hits a top speed of 120. Yesterday, my race car was doing 150. 120 is a lot when you don't have a helmet on and you're just out exposed in the air. It's 420 feet high, which if one story of a building is roughly 10 feet, 42-story building? You have got to be shitting.
Look, the Top Thrill is at the Top Thrill race or whatever that is. So that ride, the original version of that, caused somebody's death. I think somebody was injured and they had to close it down. Yeah. And then obviously they've rebuilt it, hopefully bigger and better and safer. But here's what's interesting about Ohio. Ohio makes it big again. We're like the roller coaster capital of the world.
Yes, they come from all over.
They come from. I've been up there at Cedar Point before. I took my kids when they were younger, and there were kids who made an annual pilgrimage. Like this group of teens, they were like mid-late 20s at that time, but since they're teens, they've been coming in to experience the Cedar Point roller coasters.
Yeah,
and then and down in Cincinnati we have Kings Island, which had the Beast, and had the Son of Beast, which they've shut down, but. It's
that was a nasty ride.
It was. It beat
Son
you.
of Beast was bad.
It really beat you up.
Oh man, yeah.
So do you guys ride roller coasters?
My wife got me into it. I love Kings Island now. Now Cedar Point's got rides that are just too rough on me. Okay. But we did go one year. That Top Thrill you're talking about, we saw it in action.
You got on
I did not ride that thing.
I did ride the original.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
But so I saw on there. But you're in there and you're ready to shoot out, and there's this clicking that goes on. Yeah. That kind of, if you hear the rhythm, you know when you're going to get shot out. So. My daughter and I are watching because I was not going to ride this thing. I don't know if Hayden and Angie did either, but anyway, it doesn't matter. But we're watching this, and there's olderish couple get on, and they're just laughing nervously, and they're not hearing the clicking, and they're bending down laughing when the thing shoots out.
Oh my God!
And I don't think they got injured or anything like that. But I told Madeline at the time, I was like, "Oh, they're going to be hurting." Because if you're down here and you're getting shot out at 70,
you're
just, I guess I'm more of I want to hear click. I want to know how one thing, especially when you're going to shoot out that fast. But it's a weird look of going straight up and then up, curve and back down. It just because it's maybe 7 seconds.
It's a very quick ride. It's almost not worth the wait.
Almost, yeah.
But roller coaster. I can't ride them anymore. So somewhere along the way, if I ride a roller coaster now, I have a terrible headache all day long. And I don't know. It's like some sort of internal.
I'm getting there. There are certain rides. The day that I can't ride the Beast will be a sad day.
The Beast doesn't do that to me, though.
Me either. I could ride the Beast all day long.
Respect.
I love that ride.
I don't do roller coasters, and
this is a race car driver.
Yeah, you'll find this guy. So I ride motorcycles and I race.
Right. Yeah.
But my problem is I cannot give up the control.
Oh,
if I was the guy in the lead car and I had a throttle and a brake, like I would do it. But so I'm a terrible backseat driver. I cannot be in a vehicle driven to except an airplane, I guess, because that's how.
That's true.
But
yeah.
I can't be in a vehicle
but
that's
you at
going
least can't
fast.
see it in the airplane. You're more
Yeah,
like
you're there.
in
Yeah,
a cigar.
right.
Because the best piece.
Well, you order a drink and you.
For us at least, the beast is you ride it after the park is quote unquote officially closed. After the fireworks, you're in line for the beast, and it's one of a couple of
ride. Yeah,
get the last ride, and you're oh my god, riding the beast in the dark.
That's awesome.
It's amazing because you're hitting these cold pockets of air. It's all in the dark. There's no perspective.
Wow.
There's no perspective of where you are.
It's just
but
a rush.
It's
right,
just
I'm
the
going
rush.
this year. We're going. We're going to do Common Sense Ohio.
After dark, do the last ride, get in line before the fireworks and ride it. Oh my, it's totally different. I'm surprised they don't sell T-shirts about riding the beast after the park closes. It's great.
Well, look, we probably got to wrap. You got one more. Yeah. We got to wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of sad, kind of stories that, and I'll tell you what, I'll pass on those and just talk about some election stuff. So, Secretary of State, Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose has come out with a program. He's having election boards in all the counties do 4 things. To rid inactive people off the rolls. And there's 4 things. One is where this seems so obvious, but after 4 years of consecutive inactivity due to either change of address, like cards filed with the post office, past due invoices that go unresponded and non-deliverable is another clue that that person's not there anymore. Returned as undeliverable mail from the Secretary of State or an elections board, where they send out a confirmation card and it comes back, we can't deliver this to Mrs. Smith because of whatever, we can't deliver it. And then BMV, Bureau of Motor Vehicle, mismatches between a current address and a previous address. So that all seems like pretty reasonable stuff, but of course he's being accused of.
It's hard to believe that's even.
And all those had to.
That's controversy.
All those had to be checked off.
Those are 4 things that he's asking the boards to check on.
Okay,
because he says, and they have an ongoing.
Not just one triggers it. Basically, all 4.
Any of those.
Any of those
it can trigger an investigation, and then what happens is if you are taken off the rolls before that is permanent. It is actually published on his website, Mrs. Smith, formerly at blah, blah. This is a way for organizations or the person themselves to, or a political party to look for, is she still there or not?
If it's published that way.
And then if no evidence is presented,
makes sense.
Then they're removed from the rolls.
Okay.
But somehow that's considered,
of course.
Right. It's you're tilting the election or you're stealing the election or whatever.
As long as that name is published somewhere to check, any party can look, anybody can look. I mean, I think that's legit.
Yes, it's publicly, published.
These are obvious things to me, and you might even say, "Isn't this incrementalism on the other side?" It's like, there's a difference here. These are just basic standards. So the standard is you can't buy a gun if you have a felony. So checking to see if somebody has a felony before you buy a gun makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
If you're a dealer. Now, you can't vote twice. So making sure people don't vote twice seems like it's pretty fair.
In the Constitution of Ohio and in the legislation governing elections, the county boards and the Secretary of State, they have a duty to make sure the voter rolls are accurate.
This is a government function.
This is a function. This is what they're supposed to do.
This is not a huge intrusion as far as I can tell.
Lastly, guys, the feds did agree that Ohio's 11 counties that were hit by tornadoes and high winds are now federal disaster areas.
Don't get me started on federal money for that stuff.
Loans and stuff for people that don't have insurance.
Yep. So the rest of us pay more.
Yes, we do.
Right. All right. Well, with that, we're going to wrap it up. This has been another riveting hour or so of Common Sense Ohio, where you can check us out at commonsenseohioshow.com, brought to you week in and week out by Harper Plus Accounting. Lots of stuff going on. We've got videos, we got reels, we got clips, I don't know, whatever, shorts. We got that stuff everywhere. I don't know where, but it's everywhere. Ubiquitous, if you want a nice big word. So you can check us out. I know Norm's got his blog, and I see his Facebook posts, and he's if you want to engage him, all you got to do is dare him, and then he'll he'll pounce like a panther
Let's
on
talk.
the keyboard.
Let's talk. Right.
Yeah. So coming at you right from the middle each and every week, at least until now.